Hello and welcome to Yerushalmi Berachos Daf Mem Aleph. I want to share a quick ha'ara, and I want to come back to what I promised you about the Hashmatos Yerushalmi as well. So in these few blot, we're talking about the covet for Seforim, not sitting on the same bench with them, tefillin, mezuzahs, other things like that, not being intimate with a Sefer Torah in the same room, even though the Gemara says house, the Mishnah Berurah says that it means room, etc. Because back then, if there was a mechitza, that was fine, as the Gemara says. And we find this concept of just giving respect to Seforim, even not spitting in a base medrash, which is an interesting concept, or waiting Dalet Amos after going to the restroom before davening, which is just an element of respect. So I want to just make one comment on that and a couple of quick stories. I heard from Roberto Wine a very interesting ha'ara, which was that he was talking about a professor who studied the culture of Jewish people. And what he found was something very fascinating. He said there's something very unique about Jews that we don't find in any other religion. And I'll tell you, I asked around about this as well. He said that they have reverence for their books. And when their books fall on the floor, they kiss them. And he said, we don't find that in the science community, and we don't find that in other religious communities. And I actually polled a couple of Christian clients and other people that I've interacted with. And I asked them, and they just said, we show respect in not putting it on the floor. That we do have a concept for, but we don't have a concept of kissing our books if something happens to them or something disrespectful happens. There's no such concept like that. So I don't know every single religion, etc., but I think that's an interesting ha'ara that we show that certain reverence to it, and I think that it's reflective of how much. Two things. Number one, culturally, one of my friends that I share this with also point this out to me. Culturally, we have more respect in just in general. We believe in reverence and respect, etc., which is something that the world is forgetting about. But secondly, there's a certain love and respect that we have for the Indian of Kedusha and Seforim, and we try to manifest that. There's even halachas in Shulchan Aruch about not standing in front of Seforim unclothed, or not standing in front of Shabbos candles, etc. So there's a definitely a very strong reverence that we have towards mitzvos and towards Seforim, etc., etc. So that was the ha'ara from our barrel wine. I also saw a story in the new art scroll book called The Malach about Rav Chaim Kanievsky, which is a beautiful sefer, beautiful pictures, beautiful stories. So it says that the two things that he was strict about in his household, generally he was very easygoing and relaxed to a certain degree. Obviously, he taught his children, midos and emes and mitzvahs, etc. But the only two things that he was extremely mocked about were not hitting and hurting another child. That was something that was just not tolerated. And also treating Seforim with respect. And again, you see that in a home where there's so much reverence for Beilam L'Chavero and Beilam L'Makom, and of course Beilam L'Atzmo, it makes sense that those two things would be respected. I heard a story from Slava Youngreis that she told over about her grandfather, the famous Rebbetzin Youngreis's father, that before he passed away, he kissed all of his Seforim goodbye. And she tells over the story in a lot more of a moving way. But the point is that he had, a connection, and these were his friends. These were his, his prized Seforim, and it was something that he showed a lot of respect to. Rechaim Volozhin and Ruach Chaim writes that he basically base vad l'chachamim, your house should be a place where chachamim gather. He said one of the ways that you can interpret that also is that Seforim are there, and we show and the Seforim teach us lots of things. So that is just some idea about reverence we have when we read these. We learn through the Gemara, and we understand the importance of showing respect to shul, showing respect to reverence to the place that we're at by not spitting, by not standing in front of tzoa and urine, etc. We understand that there's this concept of giving respect, reverence for obviously what it represents. One last thing I'll tell you is that I've heard that Rav Aaron Feldman tries not to be Masada Kedushin in shuls. And one of the reasons brought down is because he doesn't like the talking that goes on in the shul. There's a lack of reverence to the place where it happens. That's his issue. So, of course, I know that there's a preference in Shulchan Aruch to go outside and to make sure that the chuppah takes place under stars, etc., or at least under visible stars through glass. But there's also a hakpada that he has about trying not to be Messiah Kedushin in a shul because of the lack of reverence to the shul with the talking that goes on there. Anyway, just an interesting thought. I promised you Hashmatos Yerushalmi, so I'll just start very, very briefly. Hashmatos Yerushalmi is very fascinating. It's brought down in the back of every single sefer. Most prints of Yerushalmi. So, for example, I have the Oz V'Hadar print, and if you look all the way at the back, you'll see it. And it's very fascinating because it kind of has a combination of three main things. It brings down variant versions of the Gemara that's brought down in the Rishonim. The Rishonim, as we know, Yerushalmi has a lot of Girsa questions, so there's a lot of variant texts. So it brings down, hey, this Yerushalmi that you have in front of us, it has a very, very different text that goes like this. That's one thing. And then the second thing, I have to be careful how I say this, is that it brings down seemingly things that are just not in our Yerushalmi. And the third thing is things that are not in our Yerushalmi. Now let me explain. Part one of not in our Yerushalmi is either a Girsa issue that that we just don't have, that we're just literally missing those words. For example, in the Pirush Shir Shirim for Miuchas the Ramban in Os Yud Aleph, it brings down the Yerushalmi says Osios Henka Gufos, which is a Kabbalistic concept, that the letters of a Torah are like bodies, but Tenuos can Neshamos, and the Trup or the Nekudos, depending on how you read that. Because again, this is a Kabbalistic thing. Chaim Volozhin talks about Nefesh Chaim, Ayin Sham, and there's a lot more to this equation as well. But Tenuos, maybe let's say the Nekudos are for Neshama, and the Os below Tenua Lo Yishalim Meno Dibor, because if you don't have the Nekudos, then you can't speak. Now, this is a Kabbalistic concept. Apparently, we don't have a Girsa like this in Yerushalmi. So that's type number two. One is that there's just variant texts that say slightly different words that might change things. Two is things that seemingly are just missing out of Yerushalmi, but clearly the Rishonim are quoting from the Yerushalmi. And the third is things that are not in our Yerushalmi, but maybe misquotes. Why do I say that? Because some of the Rishonim and Achronim will say that there is no such thing as that as Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi didn't say that, and they'll try to prove why. And those are just things that were mistakenly attributed to the Yerushalmi. And I heard this from Rabbi Bechafer, who's a scholar in Yerushalmi, and many things. And he explained also that when the famous forgery of Yerushalmi Kachim came out, he actually took a lot of the Hashmatos of Yerushalmi and claimed that, oh yeah, that was in Kachim, and here's where it is. Of course, he was caught by many people. We talked about that a little bit in this segment in this series as well. But basically, a lot of these things were just kind of not accurate. They were just assumptions that, oh, this would be a good place to put in this Hashmata, and it was very obvious to find that he had done that. So let me go through a couple of them. So again, there's kind of three things. There's slightly variant texts, there's Yerushalmis that were missing, and then there's misattributions. Now, when I say the word misattributions, there's two reasons for that. Sometimes it's that, oh, the Yerushalmi couldn't have said that, but oftentimes it's actually found in a different Maimer Chazal, or it's said differently. And that's a lot, and what Rabbi Bechafer conjectures, and I agree with him very much, is that sometimes people just thought, where was that located? Okay, it must be Yerushalmi somewhere. It's very easy to just push it off because people weren't familiar with it. So I'll give you another few examples, and again, it's really fascinating to go through. For example, the Avujar Home quotes a lot of Yerushalmis, and many of them we have in front of us. For example, this is one actually. The Eshkol and the Avujar Home bring this down, and the Kolbo as well, and Beis Yosef quotes it as well from the Orchos Chaim, that the Yerushalmi says, Kol ha-brachas me'umid, that you should stand when you say a bracha. And the Rishonim try to argue about what does that mean. Is that for example, for Berachos HaShachar, you have to stand. Is Berachos Mitzvos, Berachos Hodah, Berachos HaNenen, when you make a Shahakol, you have to stand up? Probably not, right? So they say it's Berachos Mitzvos, like on a lulav, you shouldn't be sitting, unless obviously you have a medical reason that you can't stand. So again, that Yerushalmi is quoted, and we do have somewhat of a Girsa like that. The Agav, the Avujar Home, has an entire shtickle, as well as the Rashba, which he quotes from, about when you make a bracha on a mitzvah, for example, kibbutz ve'im and tzedakah and makeh, and when you and other halachas about standing, etc., etc. There's or is a rua that quotes Yerushalmi that says that at a bris they give to the yeled and they give to the mother to drink because we're being spal and it's a tefillah, so we want that to be chal on the mother and the baby as well. So again, like just interesting Yerushalmis that we don't have in front of us. If you look through it, you'll find probably a good, I don't know, on brachos you'll find a good 100 or more interesting points. There's a very famous Yerushalmi that's always quoted that probably is what there's a couple of famous Yerushalmis that don't exist. So probably one of the most famous ones is about somebody that says Parshat Man every day, will be rich and taken care of. That we don't have a source for that, but it's brought down by the Taj Bates and other people. So again, that's some of the ideas about Hashmatos Yerushalmi. I'll try to lead editor on every Masechta to try to go through things. Pay is very short, but as we talk, we'll elaborate on it, Be'ez Hashem, and bring in some interesting horrors. Have a great day.